All right, everybody, welcome back to Strange Planet Podcast. And for this week, we are going to be discussing more or less the state of America. Now, if you ask me, and you watch TV, you watch the news, see what's been going on, it seems like a lot of people are either really angry or really frustrated. Specifically, I would almost aim it mostly at the government. And I don't think they're entirely wrong. Because it seems like when both sides get in there, no matter if it's Democrat or Republican, they all do a lot of talking. But then when it comes time for action, nothing really happens, or at least benefits the middle class or the lower class in any way at all. So what I want to bring to the table right now is basically maybe bringing up some of these common occurrences that have been going on for decades at this point. And then maybe we can, discuss this, maybe formulate some solutions or some kind of resolve to this in some way, shape, or form. And then the other omission I wanted to add to it would be who might be the person that could actually maybe bring this up and maybe do something about it. Because if you ask me, the Trump administration isn't going to do a goddamn thing of anything we're going to say today. But I guess we can start off with just the immigration. I guess we can start off with that one. We can tee it right off right there. What do you guys take on the situation there? Because, yeah, it's a shit show. But, Biden got a lot of shit for it. But about the bill that was made by, I forget what the Republican guy that came up with it, but it was a right-wing nut job. And, this was just before, what was it, over the summer, more or less. And then, obviously, it was shot down by Trump because he wanted to use it to run on the election. So now here we are. He did win. But the question is, will anything get done?
I believe not, only because he was prepared to lose and fight losing. He didn't really think he'd win.
Right.
But the fact that he won surprised him. He's like, I won. Yeah.
He's like, I got to do this now?
But the worst part is, stuff he's trying to do is hurting him in the effect. Where, he wanted the time to run out on the clock for the budget. And, people wouldn't be paid to do their jobs, or whatever the situation is. So, that would have hurt his own constituents and him. I guess, he just wants to try to be the big boss bully and he has no idea what he's doing.
I still think he thinks the presidency is a dictatorship, too. And although I guess now to a certain point, I guess you could call it that, but it's not, because we still are technically in a democracy. I mean, I think we're leaning more towards an oligarchy than anything. But what's your take on this, Rook?
Well, if you're talking about immigration, I think, it's been an intractable issue for decades now. And the reason that we're having so much difficulty is because there are a conflict of interest with regard to both immigrants coming in and also what to do about them when they do come in. And we're talking about illegal immigration, of course.
Right.
And so when you have a situation where we have large sectors of our economy dependent on migrant work, such as fruit picking and farming and whatnot, there's a conflict of interest between corporations that depend upon that labor, as well as consumers who want cheap prices for the goods that they produce.
Right.
And anti-immigrant sentiment among some of those very same consumers. And so you have a lot of pressure from anti-immigrant people, but at the same time, you also have just a reluctance to, remove them from the country, because that will increase food prices, that will increase services that those migrant workers provide, at a discount to us. And so I think that's really one of the primary conflicts. But also, we live in a democracy and an interesting one at that. You have, a house that uh, just basically passes bills by majority vote. You have a Senate that is supposed to pass bills by majority vote, but because of this interesting invention called the filibuster, which is in part, I guess, based on the Constitution, uh, you know, the it lays out that a senator can, keep talking without interruption. But now they don't even really have talking filibusters anymore. They just have the threat of a filibuster. If you uh, are going to put this bill on the floor as it is, we're not going to vote for it. And not only that, we're going to block it by filibustering. So even the threat of a filibuster prevents bills that don't have at least 60 votes from getting to the floor. And of course, there are 100 senators, so it should take 51 votes to pass. But because our politics are so divided
Mm,
almost equally, there's never enough power to get something transformational done, or rarely there's enough power to do that. The last big thing that we did that was, uh, you know, divisive in many respects among the parties was Obamacare.
right.
And Obamacare passed by, the skin of its teeth.
Pretty much.
And there were compromises in that bill that had to be made in order to survive a filibuster. The Democrats barely had enough votes to overcome it. And so, and the country has only grown more divisive since then. And so it's harder and harder to get things done. It's not for the lack of will on of the Democrats, for instance. Um, it's this. It's just the nature of the the setup of our political system
And the
through
divisiveness isn't helping.
through our constitution, as well as through rules like the filibuster that have been developed that sort of prevent action from happening. And also, it's really the American people because they're so indecisive and waffle back and forth. Like, look, we went from, you know, President Clinton, and we can go back even further. We went from President Clinton, who, aside from, the impeachment, which had nothing to do with his actual job,
Right,
he did
right.
a good job for
He
the
really
economy.
did.
He brought, he created millions of jobs.
That was the last time we had a
And
profit, wasn't it?
that was the last time that we generated a surplus instead of, adding to our
Being in debt.
deficit.
Yeah.
So, by all, other than his impeachment, he was a successful president. Then, instead of rewarding that successful presidency, the country chose to elect George W. Bush.
Right.
Not through popular vote the first time, but they, through our system, they, elected George W. Bush, and then they reelected him another time. Okay. And then, um, well, you can't really say that he was a great president. Um, and especially after he left the economy in shambles.
Right.
But then we elected Barack Obama. Barack Obama fixed the economy. He passed Obamacare. He did a lot of good things in his 8 years, in his two terms. And how did the country reward that? They elected Donald Trump after. And then after Donald Trump, you know, they elected Joe Biden. So we're going back and forth and back and
Every
forth. So there's
48 years.
no real sense of progress or sense of, this is what the country wants because the country keeps changing its mind every 4 to 8 years.
Right, right.
Um, instead of, you know, parties saying, hey, look, the country wants this thing. So let's, you know, drop this issue or not drop this issue, but let's accept that this is what the country wants and let's, fight about other issues. We're relitigating the same issues. It's the same thing with, say, the Paris Climate Accords.
Yep.
So Obama signed the Paris Agreement, um,
Rightfully so.
which helped to is helping combat climate change.
Right. Which is
Just
not a
about
hoax.
every country in the world, before you call it like some liberal conspiracy, just about every country in the world, including Russia, including China, the only countries that didn't were like a couple of them, like maybe Iran or something like that. But like just about every country in the world signed on to that agreement. And then what did Trump do when
Pulls
he
out.
came in? He pulled us out of the agreement. And then Joe Biden got us back in. And then, I mean, when
Now we'll
Trump
see.
takes
Yeah. I
the
mean,
presidency, he's vowed to take us out of it again. And so there's just been this indecisiveness. And so it's really no surprise that things don't get done because there's a lack of consensus, both among, the political parties as well as the population that votes for those politicians.
let me ask you this though. When you were saying about, we were talking about the, how it flip flops every 48 years. But, I mean, if for the Democrats' sake, especially Obama in that case, do you think maybe it's partially the Democrats' fault for maybe not putting their message out where it's comprehensible? Because for the Republicans to be able to just slap right in there after 4 years or 8 years rather of Obama, and you could say the same thing about Clinton too. You know what I mean? It makes me feel like there's a message like interception somewhere, and
I
that might
mean,
be causing a ripple.
it's easy to say like, oh, it's something the Democrats are not doing, but the message that the Republicans are putting out, first of all, it's
Good point.
vile,
I see where you're going already,
it's
but
awful, it's incoherent, it's inconsistent.
yep, and not
Um,
sensible.
like they're putting out pretty much garbage, if even they have policies about things. And so I think it's more of not a matter of the content of the message, but it's the fact that their message to the Republicans' message, to the extent that they have one, resonates with people's emotions on a grand
Hmm.
scale.
Keyword there is emotions. What do you think, Mark?
Um,
I think it's basically just coming down to the Democrats are not listening to what the people need. It's they have a good idea of what they want the people for their people, which is great, but they're not hitting the direct notes, which is like Trump says he wins on the immigration and groceries. It's like, yeah, sure, groceries and inflation, that was one of the biggest things. And everyone's telling you like, hey, there's not much we can do about it. Trump said, I can make the groceries get cheaper. He hit the note on the head, even though he was lying. He hit
Right?
the note on the head. And I think there was a lot of the younger generation voting for Trump out of spite because they want change and like, oh yeah, somebody new and different. And it's like, no, you didn't see him 8 years ago. Nah.
Right?
But it's just
How quickly we forget, right?
exactly. It's it was a perfect storm of just misinformation, people being lazy, people not knowing any better. The Democrats not hitting the nail. They're not going after what the people need. And
Well, the one thing I will say, especially when it comes to like the groceries thing, like they both could say that they're going to bring it down, but let's be realistic about one thing. I don't think either of them are going to do a damn thing about it.
No.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
You know what it is? Because it's not
Hold on.
up to them. It's a free enterprise country, and it's not up to them
Hold on.
to do the prices. You know.
Hold on. Before we go down that route, though, Kamala Harris did, probably for the first time in a president has a presidential candidate or a nominee of a party has done this. She advocated for price control.
That's true.
He did propose that. He did propose a
Yeah.
solution that would have worked, and probably at least under a normal Supreme Court would pass constitutional muster. The Congress is allowed to regulate interstate commerce, and to the extent that our groceries travel through interstate commerce, its price is regulatable by the federal government. Now, is that the solution? Who knows? But that is
Could be
a
a start.
solution. That
Yeah, I
is
mean,
a
it's-
solution to make sure that the prices that people are being charged aren't exorbitant and
Yeah.
just
Right.
for the sake of profit making.
Well, it's that, and it's also it's part of it. Groceries is a broader term for living, expenses. Just being able to survive every day. I mean, it's a smart thing to do to pay 1/3 of your paycheck goes to your housing, 1/3 of your paycheck goes towards feeding and paying the rest of your bills, and then the last third was supposed to be like to save and invest in the future.
Or just in case shit. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays, you're paying more than half of your check is going towards just your living conditions,
That's
not
true.
your bills, not
On
everything
average.
else. Yeah,
That is very
so
true.
it's hard to save money. It's hard to get ahead, and people are feeling it. It's just like you work a job. Do you work a job to stay there and make money, or do you work a job to find a better job later? I mean, who knows? Maybe you can move up in the job you're at and make more money. Maybe you can get a raise to make more money if you make more money for them. There's a lot of stipulations, but at the same time, everybody's greedy, especially those who have more.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So,
but again, you can't blame that on Democrats. So
no, you can't.
Kamala Harris also proposed to create a massive project where we were building housing.
Yeah, I do remember that one too.
The housing supply so that houses would be cheaper.
And then we bring rent down.
And a lot more affordable to people.
Rent down is a very kind of, again, because it's up to those who control those rents.
That's a good point too.
Right, no, but you increase the supply of housing, whether it's people purchasing or people renting. If you increase the supply, people have options.
That's a very good point.
They say, "Oh, the rent's too high here. I'm going to go somewhere else."
Right? Yeah, somewhere else
because we built so much housing that there's an abundance of supply,
and now we don't have that at all.
And so, I think it's not the problem that the Democrats didn't have the right policy.
Okay,
I don't even think it's the right messaging. I just think that they chose not to listen.
Exactly. They chose not to listen to.
Yeah, or they chose to listen to the asshole. You know what I mean? The liar. Because they thought the grass was greener on the other side, and it's not. That's where it's at.
It also boggles my mind that through all of this, people could see that, he was a villain. He does villainous things, and it's just like, okay, he's the one to vote for us. He's gonna vote. He's gonna be our president/king. It's just no, he's not. He's for himself. He has nothing he wants to do with you. I mean, again, this is like the perfect storm, and I thought it would be better this year. Voting and people would get their asses out and do the right thing. But I don't know. I guess people thought that he couldn't win again, or enough people will vote where it won't be an issue. And I don't know. Voting is such a hassle.
I feel like in part,
but it's really not. You go and stand on a line.
You say that, things are easier said. things are easier said than done.
Unless
even
you're
when
in a
they're
state
easy.
or municipality that makes it difficult for certain
That's what I
people
was just
to
going to
do it.
bring up.
Well, yeah, there's that
That's what I mean,
too.
'cause
But
there is that, especially down south.
that's a whole nother animal. The gerrymandering, making it harder to vote. That's the Republicans on an everyday basis. But I digress. I mean, the problem I think with this country is we're not focused on getting this country being better than it could be. Better education, better work situation, whether we're producing better goods or better services. Right
Better
now,
wages.
it's everybody for
Well,
themselves. Everybody's got their head in the clouds, chasing a dream that probably would never happen.
Or
That's part of
exist.
that's part of the
one
reality
of
of
the
just life.
parties
Is
wants to eliminate the Department of Education. The other doesn't.
it's just yeah. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
going the other way now.
Maybe we need to get rid of the Department of Education. Maybe we need to start having a Department of Better Education, or
Wouldn't that be building and structurizing the one we already have to make it better rather than
yeah. But
eliminating it? You know what I mean?
how many band-aids and friggin' blood transfusions have to put into the system where it's still built for the worker and not the thinker? You know what I'm saying? When you go to school, what do you learn? Math, science, social studies, English.
Yeah, you don't really learn any life like
the
taxes
ability-
or none of that.
Yeah,
That's the
you
point.
learn the ability to calculate, talk, and communicate with others.
Basically, to
have-
function.
Have a basic understanding of the physical world and how it reacts with each other. Science and history. Brief history of how the world was, and history is always a touchy subject with people because it's written history, and depending on who writes it, gets to decide what history was supposed to be like. Like they're trying to write history out that January 6th was a glorious, shining moment and not a huge stain on the democracy in this country.
Yeah, because what worries me about eliminating the Department of Education and Trump having anything to do with any of this is one simple thing. If you remember, not that long ago, they were trying to ban books on slavery and stuff. Now, that is a stain on this country, but it is also
trying
a
to.
fact.
They do that shit in
Yeah,
Florida.
actually, it's not trying. You're right. They actually are doing that in like Florida and shit. But like, see,
Yeah.
that's trying to rewrite
And
history.
instead, in
That's not
places
good.
in places like Oklahoma, they're getting the Trump Bible.
What? Are you
Yeah.
kidding? Yo, this country's headed for
Hey,
fucking doom, bro.
what-
Are you
what-
serious?
They're actually spending state funds on the Trump Bible.
Wow.
What is the Trump
I did
Bible?
not know that, but that's called wasting.
It's
the
a
state
Bible
funds.
that
Trump
has
translated? Long,
Yeah.
long ago, in a galaxy far, far
It's
away,
the King Trump
God
version.
created the heavens and earth, and down came a whole bunch of people whose names I can't read until Adam and Eve came around, and we all know what happened there. But that was a
Hey,
lie. That was a
I-
no,
fake apple.
it's the Bible that he was hawking.
It's the false prophet. I'm telling you, these idiots are falling for it. That's the saddest part of it all.
Yeah.
I had no idea state funds are going into that. Like that is,
I mean,
it's
Yeah, I
alarmingly
believe it was
scary.
Oklahoma, but
What was that? Oklahoma?
I believe it was Oklahoma that
Oh,
is
big
doing
fucking
that.
shocker there, I guess. But thank God I don't
Oklahoma,
live
where
there.
they get all the Trump Bibles.
Right? It's probably his edited version, so he probably made the sun rise and everything. But but if we could take a brief tangent, I was going to move on to one more little issue here that has been seemingly getting worse by the freaking month, and that's just gun violence, especially in schools. Now, I mean, obviously, I don't have to say this. People should know this at this point. There's only one of the two parties that seems like they even consider this not only an issue, but actually want to do something about it. And that would be the Democratic Party. But what cracks me up, though, is like, I mean, I think it was, I don't know how many years ago, but Australia had a gun problem too with a mass shooting. This could have been almost a decade or so ago. It could go that far. It could even be further. And then they passed some gun reform, and I don't think they really had anything of the sort since. So if they can do it, why the fuck can't we? Like I
Well,
don't
we
get it.
we did have an assault weapons ban
Yeah,
that
Clinton did it,
expired,
right?
and then we just never passed it again.
And that would be Bush's fault technically, 'cause didn't it expire during his presidency? I would assume.
Correct. I believe it did.
Yeah, see, like that's irresponsible, and that's not working towards progress, and it's gonna make this shit happen like it kind of is on almost a weekly basis. So it's either they don't give a shit, me mainly Republicans, or we're just gonna look the other way every week. I mean, like I don't get it. Like
Well,
like just
here
sitting here watching it though, it gets disturbing. It's like they want
it,
to normalize it. You know what I mean?
they
Yeah.
do. They absolutely do. And it's the other thing that we can't do anything about it is because they were already voted in, and we have to wait for the next chance to vote them out. And then it
Well,
comes down to what people hear and see and make their decision on versus us who are more informed and can see the acts happening in front of us, knowing like that's not good. That's not good. Throw the red flag, foul on the play.
Right. But then you
well,
also have like the Supreme Court and you also have Congress. And if they're mostly Republican, and then say you have a Democratic president that comes up with
It's
legislation for it, they don't
it,
want to look bad. It'll make their party look bad.
it's
So it's, you
different
know what I
though.
mean? It's not going to happen.
It's different though. What used to happen when the Republicans would take office, they do some stuff, but yeah, they'd set us back a little bit. They'd spend a little more money than usual. But like since the MAGA Republicans came in, we're talking
Circus
like
in town.
we're talking eliminating, services for people, raising the retirement age so you work yourself to death before you even, collect a dime of retirement funds.
Right?
Uh,
Or even have
uh,
a retirement.
I mean,
hold
like,
on though. It's a myth though that Republicans like are more conservative with respect to spending. Like, obviously, Trump blew up the fucking budget. He's spent a ridiculous amount of money in
my
comparison. Like
wall's only five
he
miles
raised,
long. I need it longer.
he raised our debt by like a
8 trillion,
third,
right? Yeah, or something like that.
a third of the nation's entire debt in the history of our country was created by Trump. Okay. And then like Bush spent all that money on wars and his tax cuts.
Yep.
Reagan spent all this money to build nukes to out perform Russia, in the nuclear arms race. And like it's just a myth that Republicans don't like spending. They love spending.
Oh, of course.
What they like to do is say when a Democrat gets in office, you can't spend anything and you can't spend anything for the benefit of the people.
Isn't
That's
that ironic? Yeah, see, that
that's
answers our question for most
now
of this
now I'm not
discussion
saying
tonight.
that military spending doesn't benefit people because it does.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's
Let's just be
acceptable.
clear. But
All
it's
right.
hypocritical to say that Democrats like to overspend, but then you see the Republicans spend, just as much, if not more, and yes, and in fact, more money than Democrats do.
Oh, definitely more.
But
Yeah.
then they like to paint themselves as the party of fiscal conservatism and responsibility. They're not. They're
They're
just
definitely
not.
not. See, the problem is you have like these networks that program these people's minds, like Fox News, FAUX, and like OAN, and all these other,
Fox
right
News.
wing whack jobs, and they just every day they keep beating this shit in their head. And the more you keep, throwing a lie at somebody like that, eventually, if they keep hearing it, they're going to be dumb enough to believe it, whether it's true or
Oh
not.
yeah, well, the thing is when you keep repeating a lie and you hear it from different sources and in different ways, then part of you believes, oh, there must be some type of truth to that
Hmm.
because why would I be hearing this from all over?
Mm.
And it just gets more dangerous with social media because you'll be getting that same information
On a daily
from
basis.
different sources, but what's really happening is that their analytical programming is sending you that information because it knows you are engaged with it. It knows that, it moves you in some way.
Right? Whether you like it or
And
whether you hate it.
right. And probably because you hate it.
You hate it more so, right?
Because those type of emotions are stronger. They get more of a reaction and they get more engagement. Okay. And that's just a human nature. So they attract your attention by, you know, sending you things that engage with the human emotion of anger and fear. And those things are more attractive to people than things that make them happy or joyful
or they
and,
need.
or even laughter. So it's just unfortunate that that's the way the human mind and psyche work.
The way the social networks
But
work too.
well, I mean, how else are they going to? That's the way that people work. And
That's
when
fair
you
too. That's a
and
very
so
good point. But that's
you
just
know,
egging it on, though. That's only
and
throwing
then
more kerosene into the
these
fire.
these these people that put out this information know the weakness of human psychology and they exploit it to the fullest for their own benefit.
Basically, because it's all about money in the end. That's a very good point. It's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, but it's all about money for them, not us.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, I call it modern manipulation because that's what basically we've been living in these past, I don't know, say decade or two.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because they're both sides are going to say stuff. But if you really can read between the lines, you know what I mean? There's a fine line of bullshit.
I got one for you.
Okay.
How about when there's a natural disaster? We're not going to okay natural disaster funds because we're in the current presidency of our opposing party. So we're going to say
Hmm.
no, no, no until it's time for the new party to come in. And when the new party comes in, oh, we'll take care of that right away because we know they weren't doing anything at the time.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Republicans aren't handing up funds for relief because they want to wait until Democrats are out of office so they can blame them for it.
No, well, I mean, disaster relief has, the problems with that have been going back for years. Republicans always complain. If you remember about maybe a decade ago, dozen years ago, they had Superstorm Sandy in the Northeast. Yeah. So the funny thing about disaster relief is that Republicans seem to always want it when they need it, but when Democrats need it, they don't want to provide. So if you guys remember, there was about maybe a decade, dozen years ago, Superstorm Sandy, which affected the Northeast and obviously blue states. And in particular, New Jersey got hit hard.
Oh yeah.
And I remember Governor Christie, was asking for aid, which he was provided by President Obama. Um, but a lot of the Republicans in the House were very angry and tried to block aid for Superstorm Sandy.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean,
This is
and
supposed to be
it's just
America.
so hypocritical because you have, you know, hurricanes and tornadoes that affect southern states, and when they ask for aid, we provide it to them.
Yeah, we don't
Keep
ask
in
what
mind
color you are.
that right. Keep in mind that the vast majority of uh, federal dollars come from blue states.
Right. That's
Um,
a fact too.
we don't, when a disaster occurs, we provide to, whoever needs it. Now, if you remember back to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, in Louisiana, Louisiana is a red state. Now, what they did was they took federal dollars and they rebuilt certain areas, but not others. Can you guess what the distinguishing factor was? I'll give you a hint. Race.
Ha! I was gonna go
So,
there, but I was like, maybe I would be wrong this time.
oh yeah, no,
It really was too.
when
No
I was in
kidding.
law school, and this was like a few years after Hurricane Katrina. Yeah, it was like several years
Wow.
after Hurricane Katrina. I went down there and volunteered at a school that was, trying to establish itself, and I was helping to comply with local laws. And so the reason they needed this school was because they didn't rebuild the schools that were destroyed. And
Wow.
so in this particular town. It was a majority black town because shit is still segregated there.
Wow.
It was just destroyed. The housing wasn't rebuilt. Um, Either that or it was, bought out by people who didn't live there. Um, and also the schools. There was one school that was there, and it was basically an elementary school, middle school, and a high school all in one. That wasn't the case before the storm, and they just chose to spend the federal dollars on the town next door, which just happened to be majority white. And not only did they rebuild the schools, they were building, a brand new football field. Like they were taking care of things that, weren't essential to a school while not actually rebuilding, the schools in the town next door. And these are using federal dollars. And it's not like,
Wow.
because of, local funds. No, these are federal dollars going to help. And it was because of the Republican state legislature that allocated these funds to specific towns. So, I mean, there are, when it comes to disaster relief, Democrats tend to be very generous. We want, places that have been hit hard by disasters to recover.
Yeah.
And
the funding
it just so happens that a lot of disasters affect red states. They live in places where there are hurricanes and tornadoes.
Right.
Obviously, in California, you have wildfires. The Northeast sometimes, gets flooding, occasional hurricane.
Yeah, occasional hurricane.
But it's not like, every hurricane season, some part of the South gets fucking devastated.
Yeah.
And we have to, shell out federal dollars, which come from everyone. It's our collective, money that we spend. And so we have to, and we're happy to do it because we know that it's not their fault.
Right. It's an act of God.
Most of it, it's
you
not,
can't control that.
There are things you could do to better prepare for it. And in the case of Hurricane Katrina, there were probably some things that could have been done. But by and large, we help out where it's needed. And Republicans, on the other hand, they just have this inclination to say, oh, it's not us, we're not going to help. And that mentality has pervaded American society. And that's the reason that you couldn't elect a Kamala Harris and that we're putting Donald Trump back in. It's this sort of attitude that people have developed in America that's extremely selfish and short-sighted and
disturbing.
Very, very sort of tribal.
Yeah, because even if you take it outside the box, like, say, God forbid, of course, that like under Trump's watch, say, God forbid, a hurricane or something, takes out part of the Northeast or is headed that direction. We don't know if Trump's actually gonna give those people the aid that they need because of the way they vote. Like, really? This is America? Like, like this is where we're at right now? Like it's such a circus. And it's just making the division worse. And the selfishness. If you're okay with that, then you're part of the problem. All right, everyone. And that's all we got for this week. We bring up some possible solutions to what seems to be inevitable problems. Now, there was a lot more we wanted to cover, so I got a feeling in the near future we might pick back up on this topic again, as like Big Pharma was another thing I wanted to bring up among many others. So thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.